Hello everyone, today we'll go through a short tutorial on how to set up some basic AI with Game Creator. Game Creator is a simply amazing tool with a lot of interesting modules, but it can be confusing for some on how to combine these functionalities. So in this video we will set up basic AI that patrols an area, but once he sees the player, engages in combat. The requirements to make this happen are of course Unity, and at the time of recording we would need 2019.3.5 or higher. We will also need Game Creator and the Behavior module and Shooter module in this first AI tutorial video. In later videos we will also look on how to combine this with the Stats and Melee modules. Now I am by no means an expert, but wanted to share this for anyone who could benefit from this. So let's dive in. I've set up a really basic scene here. So we have a plane to have something to walk on. We have our cube. The reason for this cube is to have something to hide behind. So I want to make sure the AI doesn't spot us right away because its field of view is quite big. So this little block obstructs the AI's view. Now, what I've done to make my life easy is I went over and I copied the main camera, camera motor and player all from one of the demo scenes included in the shooter module. Now, if you already have a player controller set up, you obviously do not need to do this. But if you have nothing set up and just wants to see how this works, please follow along. So we'll go to plugins, Game Creator, we'll go to shooter example, scenes, and we'll open the combat scene. We'll take the player, the main camera, the camera motor adventure, right click, copy, and you go back to your own scene. No, we don't want to save any of this. And right click and just paste them in. Now, as I mentioned, I already have them in my scene, so I don't need them. But there you go. Really basic, but I just wanted to have something to test with. My lighting is set for HDRP. If you're not using that, then you'll have different basic directional lighting, I assume. So it might look slightly different, but doesn't really matter at all. Other than that, we have the plane, we have the cube, and that's pretty much it. So I will demonstrate how this works. So let's hit play. Now let's head over into our scene view so we can actually see how our AI is patrolling the area. So he will endlessly patrol the area until he has a reason to stop, and the reason to stop would be spotting our player. Now, like I mentioned, he has a pretty decent field of view, so let's open this up. So this is his cone. Not really sure if you can see this really well, but he has a cone view here, and the circle is the distance. I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't trigger right away, so that's why I put this block object in place. Now if we go into game mode, control our player,
Stop!
he will basically endlessly keep shooting us until we're dead. So that's it really. Really basic, so just combining the behavior module with some basic shooter AI. So you might have noticed some ping flying around. That's because I'm using HCRP and the default muzzle was not upgradable to HCRP, but that's alright. You can manually do this, which I will do at some point. So let's go to our soldier. So in order to create our soldier, let's disable this one for now. I will head back to this one because I don't know everything from the top of my head. So let's just create an empty here. We'll call it soldier new. And inside of this we want to add a child, which is our character. The reason I'm adding this as a child to this empty is because I want to add the patrol area in here and the actions. I want this to be something that I can simply copy paste all over my level, including the patrol area, so I don't have to manually do this each and every time. So here we have our character. Now if you straight away want to add your own model in here, just drop it in. You can change the state, but for this tutorial I'm not going to touch any of this, but just wanted to show you where it is. So we'll add a couple of components. So we'll add the character shooter component, the behavior component, and we'll add the perception. And let's drag this to one. No, wow, that's a lot. So 15. Our little guy is not here, I assume. Oh, he's below the ground. That's just great. So let's drag him up. There we go. Let's turn him around. Perfect. So here we have our basic character soldier. Now none of these things are set yet, but these are all the basic components we need. Now in order to create your own patrol area, you have to set markers. Now again, I like to keep my life as simple as possible. So what I'll do here is, for the demo purposes, just copy over the basic patrol area in one of the example scenes. So I could have just copied over the other one, but I want to show you this so you can do it yourself. So we'll go to Game Creator, Behavior Examples, and open up Example 2. Yes, let's save our scene. So here we have the actions patrol. So all this is basically move the invoker to marker, wait, move, wait, move, wait. So literally just an endless patrol. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this over, go back to our own scene. Here we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, add this to our new soldier. So the reason I'm doing this is simply because I want to be able to copy paste my AI. I don't like to do things all over for no reason. So we'll just drag this up, and this is the area he will patrolling. You don't have to do this, you can not have it as a child, but I personally like to keep things simple for myself. And there we go. We have the actions patrol. So now if we move our soldier around, the area will move with him. So again, this is just to easily copy paste your AI all around your game. So next up we're going to create our actions for combat. So let's create an empty. Again, I want this to be a child of our soldier, but none of the character. So let's create an empty and call this actions shoot, and we'll add the actions component. Now again, this is something you have to do as well if you manually want to create your patrol, which I would recommend to do at some point just to mix it up a bit. But for now, we want him to follow our player. So once the combat starts, we want our invoker to call our player. So here we have character as an option, player and invoker. So if you would set character, you can manually drag in your character. I don't want to do that. I want this to automatically be set, so that's why I'm using invoker, and we want him to follow our player. You can change the radius to whatever you want. I'll just keep it at the default values for now. So we want him to follow our player, then halt for a tiny bit. So we add a wait, then we add stop follow. So the reason I'm adding a stop follow is because it's not realistic that the moment he starts shooting, he's still running. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I want him to stand still when he shoots. So invoker, stop follow. That simple. Then I want him to aim the weapon at our character. So the reason I'm choosing aim position and not aim at target is because I want it to be slightly realistic. So he, at the moment he starts to aim, he aims at where the player is standing at that moment. So if we move, then he won't hit us. Makes the combat slightly more interesting and less unbeatable. So we want him to rotate towards our player as well, otherwise it just looks weird. So he will rotate towards our player, and then to smoothen it a tiny bit, let's add another wait of 0.5 seconds. Again, you don't have to do this, it just seems to smooth the transition a bit. And then we want him to start shooting. So we want the invoker to start shooting, and he will shoot the weapon towards our player, which we set above. And then wait again for 0.5 seconds, and then he will stop aiming, because otherwise he'll arms will get tired. He will stop aiming, and then this will restart. So the reason this will we're choosing restart here is because if we want to make sure that he goes towards the player again, if the player starts moving around a lot, we don't want him to just stop and shoot from a long bigger distance. So we want to make sure that he keeps following the player around. You can remove these weights if you want it to be slightly faster. I think it looks a bit smoother if we add them, but again, you don't have to do this at all. So here we've set up our actions for shooting. So we have our actions for patrol, which we copied over, but as you can see, this is quite similar to what we did previously, but instead here we want the character to move towards markers. But for your first time, it's easier to just copy paste these over. The reason we're not copy pasting over anything from the shooter demo scene is because it's actually a lot more complex and with our behavior module, it doesn't have to be that complex. So that's why we're creating it from scratch, just slightly easier. So like I mentioned, now we need to create a behavior. So let's create one. So I created my own folder for all of my behaviors, which as you can see is 2, which is not a lot. So let's add, where are we? Game creator, behavior tree, test behavior. There we go. So we've created it. Now we want to make sure our character is using this. So we're going to drag our test behavior in. Perfect. It says there are no parameters. That's what. So the parameters are the 2 we just created. So we want to be able to drag these into this parameter field. So let's go ahead and create our test behavior. So this is our Blackboard. Looks really plain. It's really simple, and that's the idea. So we created a root. This is where we'll start. Now we're going to drag in a composite. So there are multiple selections here. So you have selector, sequence, random selector, random sequence, and parallel. So the selector will choose from several scenarios, which is what we want to do right now. Sequence will, well, it's a sequence, so you will have tasks execute in a sequence. But if you want to create more dynamic AI, you can have random select and random sequence. This way, AI will dynamically wander around your world. Now, our soldiers are not that dynamic and they just want to kill us. So let's keep it simple. And then let's add our first and second task. So let's keep this nice and tidy. So there will be 2 tasks. So one for if the character sees us, he will start shooting us, and the second one, if he doesn't see us, he will start patrolling endlessly. So in order to create this, we need to make sure that we select that he cannot see us at this moment. So the condition here is that he, invoker, so that's the character, cannot see us, and that's when he will perform a couple of actions. So we want to make sure, and again, you don't have to do this, but it looks a bit weird, that he's not running around while patrolling. So the invoker can run is set to off. So we don't want him to run while patrolling. Looks weird. I don't know if you've ever seen someone patrol while running. I haven't. And that's it. Now he will execute the patrol we copied over. And in order to do this, we need it to be a variable. And we will call this patrol. And once the patrol is done, he will have to catch his breath for 2 seconds, and then he will restart the patrol. So all of the patrol actions are in the actions patrol we copied over. So we're not adding that in the behavior graph itself. So if he doesn't see us, he cannot run, he will walk, he will execute the patrol task, catch his breath for 2 seconds, and then restart the patrol. That's it. Really simple. Now, if he does see us, and can see, so if he does see the player, then we want him to run, because this time he needs to run towards us. So you might have remembered we had moved towards the player in the action shoot. So it's more realistic if he actually runs towards us, because, you know, we're a threat, he's an enemy, he wants to kill us. So this time we said can run. Now to make things interesting, let's add a gesture. You don't have to do this, I think it's fun. So if he sees us, he will wave at us, shout at us, which we'll add as well, and then start shooting. You know, just a little bit of respect. He'll give us a warning. So I'm using a gesture that's included in the behavior example. But if you have your own animations, you can use your own animations. We're not waiting till this completes, because at the same time we want a message to pop up. We don't want this to be in a sequence. And the message will be stop. And I have an audio file that shouts stop as well, which you might have heard in the beginning of the game. You can obviously choose whatever you want. If you want him to swear, and you have an audio file where someone swears, you can use that. Now this doesn't take 2 seconds, it's a really short word. And then we want him to have ammo to shoot at us. So the invoker needs ammo. So we'll just use bullets because I'm using a revolver. Choose cartridges if he's using the sniper, or, you know, fragmentation for grenades, or arrow if he's using a bow. But in this time he's using bullets. Don't want him to run out. It's not realistic because a revolver doesn't have 50 bullets, so you can change it to whatever you want. And once we're done, we're going to draw the weapon. So the invoker is drawing the weapon. You can also duplicate this and have the player draw the weapon at the same time if it's, you know, part of a sort of dynamic cutscene. This time it isn't, it's just the character drawing his revolver. That's it. So he can run now. He will wave at us, he will shout stop at the same time as waving, and he will then reload and draw his weapon. So now we're ready for the actions we set up. So execute actions again, and we want this to be a variable because we want to drag in our own. So actions shoot, beautiful. And this time we choose wait to finish, simply because the actions we did set up here will restart. Reason for that is this basically endlessly loops, because he will only stop shooting once either one of us is dead. That's the point. If you don't want to do that, you can mix it around, but for this demo, that's what we want the AI to do. And that's it. Now we need to add those variables, so we call them patrol, and we call them actions shoot. Perfect. Now let's save. Beautiful. So now when we go to our character, in your case he will have 2 parameters. Considering I'm already using those parameters, they do not show up because I gave them the same name, which is not really that clever. But yeah, in your case there will be 2 parameters here. So these 2 parameters, let's make sure, yeah, cool. So these two parameters are the ones we set up. So we want action patrol, I want action shoot, and there we go. So let's hit play. And here our AI is walking. As you can see, a lot closer this time. We were in his field of view, but the object obstructed his view. Beautiful. Now let's see if he will start shooting at us.
Stop!
And there we go. He started shooting at us. He wasn't the most amazing shot, but again, if you remove the weights, he will be slightly more accurate. I don't want that. I don't want every bullet to hit me. But it depends on the type of game you're playing. And there we go. We have our basic AI set up. So he will patrol, and if he sees us, he will start shooting at us. That's it. So in our next video, we will actually start combining the stats module with this example as well. That way our player and enemy will have a health bar. Once depleted, one of the two will actually die and stop all of their actions. We will also create a variation of this with melee combat, which is actually really simple, but we'll do that in the next video. Thanks for watching, and if you like, please hit like and subscribe. Cheers!